In MotoGP's crown, who will reign in Spain in the Tissot Sprint next live? It's time for MotoGP. So the wonderful Circuito de Jerez Angel Nieto on the Grand Prix calendar since 1987. A fan's favourite, a rider favourite. We have a cracking 12-lap Tissot Sprint coming up in just over 20 minutes' time. 13 corners, tight layout, 4.423 kilometres, 2.75 miles in length. 8 rights, 5 of them left. 2 of those 8 rights include the brilliant turn 5 onto back straight, and then turns 11 and 12, which really do get the adrenaline pumping here. Sector 2 brings you onto the long back straight, into the Pedrosa corner turn 6, and then into the brilliant stadium section, which is packed to the rafters here this afternoon. Overtaking hot spots and hard braking zones into turn 1, turn 6 and turn 13. Keep an eye on Pedro Acosta coming from 10th on the grid, and turn 5 is the highest stress zone for the Michelin tyres. Action aplenty guaranteed in the Tissot Sprint coming up shortly. This was 1 year ago into turn 13, Lorenzo Corner, Pecco Bagnaia taking the Grand Prix win from Brad Binder. Two weeks ago at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, it was Marc Marquez looking to reclaim the throne as the king of COTA. First time the 93 led on the Gresini Ducati, crashing out at turn 11. Maverick Vinales, who dropped back to 11th place on lap 1, fought his way through to a sensational victory ahead of Pedro Acosta. Mav returned in Austin, Texas. First time win for him on the factory Aprilia. Historic race for Vinales and the Lawali factory, as he became the first rider in MotoGP history to win for 3 different manufacturers. Fast forward 2 weeks, and we are set for some showdown under the Spanish sunshine as we get set and brace ourselves for the 12-lap Tissot Sprint here at the Circuito de Jerez Angel Nieto with Spain's superstar. There he is on your screens right now, number 93, Marc Marquez. Power to pole position, and number 93 in 2 dramatic qualifying sessions this morning, which were rain disrupted. There was heavy overnight rain in this part of Andalusia. Thankfully, as you can see from these live pictures, the drone flies over the flying saucer onto the start-finish line here in Jerez. We have got some sunshine peeking through the clouds. It's the hottest conditions of the day so far, 20 degrees, although compared to this morning when the riders had to contend with damp conditions in the 30-minute practice session, tricky damp conditions in both qualifying sessions, the wind has definitely picked up this afternoon, and that did bring just a few light rain spots towards the back end of that earlier Q2 qualifying session for the Moto2 riders. Let's hope, fingers crossed, it does stay dry for this Tissot Sprint, because this should be an absolute belter. There is an indication of just how much the breeze has picked up here. We're about, 25 minutes, half an hour drive outside of downtown Jerez. Some atmosphere here, as always, as we begin the countdown to the Tissot Sprint. Round 4 in 2024. Jorge Martin leads the World Championship, looking for his 12th consecutive Tissot Sprint, as Marc Marquez goes in search of his first win for Ducati. And what a place it will be to do it at the very circuit where his career was completely derailed. Many thought his career might have even been ended by that horrendous crash he had at turn 3 here back in the Spanish Grand Prix in 2020. He's back on top form, and he's back on top spot in qualifying earlier on today. Matt Burton Lewis Sotheby then in the commentary box with Simon Crafar down on the grid to talk you all through this afternoon's action. Great crowd, great atmosphere building here ahead of the Gran Premio Estrella Galicia 00 of Spain. A front row that will feature Marc Marquez. Took his first front row for Ducati last time out at his beloved COTA. He's on pole position for the first time. A 146.773 got the job done for Marquez in an eventful Q2. He had scares at turn 10. Seconds after he'd taken that first pole, he produced a trademark spectacular Marquez save on his knee and elbow in the first corner. Of course, the Spanish fans, they are here supporting their own. They would love nothing more than to see Marc Marquez, Jorge Martin, Pedro Acosta, or any Spaniard for that matter, take the spoils here this afternoon. Reigning world champion Pecco Bagnaia, winner of the last 2 Spanish Grand Prix, work to do for the Italian. Heads this third row of the grid. He went too late on that Michelin medium rear rain tyre this morning. But Lewis, you feel like it's almost written in the stars after everything that's happened to Marc Marquez here in Jerez in the past. 93rd pole position of his career for number 93. The fans expect, Spain expects, I'm not going to lie, I think we expect something special in the commentary box as well.
Yeah, the qualifying session and the rain that affected it really has set the stage beautifully for the 12-lap Tissot sprint coming up. A lot of riders out of position on this grid. Marc Marquez certainly not one of them. We're used to seeing him on pole position, as you mentioned. Pole number 93 for the number 93. With the World Championship leader on the outside of the front row, we've got Brad Binder back up at the front. We've got Bagnaia needing to overtake from 7th. Pedro Acosta and Maverick Vinales, our top 2 in Austin, out of position on the 4th row of the grid. This should be some sprint.
And this was the moment when he realised he had taken pole position. At this moment he was thinking, after the mistake at turn 1, he's fluffed it. But this is him looking at the big screens. There you can see on the inside of turn 2, Marquez now will roll away on the damp surface, and then it's going to finally dawn on him that his 146.773, there's the fist pump, first pole position since the Portimao Grand Prix to kick off 2023. And this is Gigi Dall'Igna, the man who pulls the strings inside the factory Ducati team, delighted to see Marc Marquez on pole position. There's a lot of press gossip. Even Repsol Honda taking a nod to their former hero, of course, HRC MotoGP, on their official Twitter feed. Congrats, Marc Marquez. A nice touch, that. A nice gesture, of course, after Marc Marquez won 6 world titles in the Premier class for HRC. Lots of talk that Gigi Dall'Igna is already pushing hard to get Marc Marquez in that factory team alongside Pecco Bagnaia. 93rd pole, as we mentioned, 4th in Jerez, but his first in 10 years. First since 2014 for Marquez on home turf here in Andalusia.
And as you say, it feels in some ways written in the stars that Marc Marquez is going to end his wait for a sprint win and potentially more this weekend on home soil. But it kind of felt like that in Austin, didn't it? It kind of felt like it was written in the stars that the King of Kota was going to return to his throne after he took the lead, and then of course he went down shortly afterwards. So I think Marc Marquez has been around long enough nowadays knowing not to assume anything in MotoGP nowadays. What really helps him though, sounds obvious, he's on pole position, but this is as tough a circuit as most to overtake on. It's quite narrow. You really do want to be at the front into those first 2 corners where we saw chaos here last year. So Marc Marquez arguably has done half of the hard work already. How
much the Spanish fans love Marc Marquez? Well, we just saw it there. He's got his own dedicated grandstand here in Jerez. His fans are out in their numbers. They're out in force to see if he can win for the first time on a Ducati. 2nd in the Tissot sprint in Portimao. 2nd in the Tissot sprint last time out in Austin, Texas. Is he going to go one better here this afternoon? Well, we don't have to wait too long, do we, to find out. All eyes on that front row. Marc Marquez. Marco Bezzecchi goes from 2nd place. Valentino Rossi on site. A good fillip, a good boost for Bezzecchi and Fabio Di Giannantonio. They capitalise on those tricky conditions this morning. Bez, 2nd on the grid, his first front row since he was on pole in that memorable first Indian Grand Prix last September. Di Giannantonio goes from 5th. He's had good speed throughout today, particularly in the rain conditions, although it does look like, hopefully, got everything crossed in the commentary box, haven't we, that we are going to get this Tissot sprint run done and dusted in the dry conditions, although there are, as Lewis is just pointing out next to me, some rather ominous and threatening grey clouds that are starting to gather right over the paddock here in Jerez.
Yeah, the rain's been arriving from around sort of turn 8, turn 9, the stadium section. That's where it's coming from. So if we do get any rain, that's where you'll see it first. As you say, hopefully we get away without any rain during this Tissot sprint, because it's got all the ingredients already for an absolute cracker, and surely Pedro Acosta is going to be in the heart of the action. One thing he's proven already in his MotoGP career, which is only 3 races old, is he's very, very good at overtaking. He's going to need those talents and powers of recovery this afternoon.
He really is, going from the head of the 4th row, ahead of the informed Maverick Vinales, and last year's pole setter Aleix Espargaro. The factory of Aprilia's went AWOL this morning in the tricky conditions of Q2. Vinales, who looked once again bang on form coming to the Spanish Grand Prix, finds himself down in 11th place on the grid. He was 1.8 seconds away from Marquez's pole time. Aprilia just missed the ball completely in Q2 this morning. The GOAT is back on site. I'm sure the doctor has ordered a podium for his boys. Will they deliver? Pertamina Enduro VR46 Racing Team owner Valentino Rossi, who absolutely adored Jerez. 6 MotoGP wins, a 125cc winner here, a 250cc winner here, his last World Championship podium here back in 2020, and who will ever forget his 1999 toilet celebration when he won the 250cc Grand Prix. High hopes for Valentino, with Bez 2nd and the Gian Antonio 5th.
Marco Bezzecchi on the front row for the first time since India last year. It's been a long time for Marco, who of course has been trying to adapt his style to the very different GP23 to the GP22 he was on last year. It does feel as if Bezzecchi is getting back towards the Bez we saw last year once again, although potentially the conditions of qualifying have flattered him a little bit. But it is an intriguing front row of the grid, isn't it? Of course, with Jorge Martin there in 3rd, Bezzecchi alongside Marc Marquez, and if you were with us in Valencia last year, you know those two don't particularly get along.
And who was victorious in the Tissot sprint here 1 year ago in Jerez? That rider on your screens right now, Brad Binder, who was pretty frustrated yesterday, having took a late tumble at turn 7, caught by a gust of wind going through that high-speed turn 7. That meant he was in Q1 this morning. Been a good salvage job so far for Brad Binder. The replicating Factory Racing star goes from the head of the 2nd row. So what happened to the Aprilias in the tricky conditions this morning? Don't discount them, because they've got great race pace, both Maverick Vinales and Aleix Espargaro, but they find themselves marooned down in 11th and 12th on the grid. Let's get some thoughts from Aprilia race boss Paolo Brenora, who's with Simon.
He is. Paolo, I had to come and see you because Maverick, fastest yesterday, clearly on form, but what happened in the wet?
Yeah, unfortunately, we put the correct tire for sure, but was not the correct timing for the feeling of the rider. So, as you have seen, Binder already did the Q1, so was already in the comfort with the tire. We were not in the same situation. Should have been necessary to stay more on that tire, but by the way, this is the races. During the FP2 with more water, the 2 rider was absolutely in confidence with the bike, in comfort with the bike, and we miss an opportunity for sure. We lose the opportunity to be more in the front.
But everyone wants to know, we saw a Maverick come through from 11th in Austin, you know, after the first turn, but he's 11th on the grid here, but it's so narrow and twisty. What are your thoughts? 2 times for the sprint and for the GP, 11th on the grid. Is it possible?
It's so difficult to say something, but it is completely different compared to Austin. In Austin, Maverick has much more margin in terms of lap time. Here, we are much more close with the other competitor, and as you said, it is not, Jerez is not easy to make overtake.
Best of luck.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks to Aprilia's Paolo Brenora. Maverick Vinales, not the time he was looking for, his lowest qualifying in 17 since the Saxon Ring last summer. He's got it all on if he is to make it 3 successive Tissot sprint wins. Brilliant in the sprint in Portimao. Likewise, brilliant once again in the sprint in Cota. But if he is to make it 3 on the spin, it's going to be some going to come from 11th on the grid in just 12 laps around a circuit, which is notoriously hard to overtake on.
Yeah, he needs a big start, does Maverick Vinales. You saw a moment ago the teammates of this man. As we look at Marco Bezzecchi, Fabio Di Gianantonio starting from P5, and 5 is quite an apt number for Digia, because that's the number of sprint laps he's completed so far this year. Saturday afternoons have not been particularly fortunate for Fabio so far, so that will be something he'll be quite keen to change over the course of this afternoon. 2nd and 5th then on the grid for the Pertamina Enduro VR46 team. 3 GP23 of course, in our top 5 positions on the grid.
We've got another sprint winner completing that second row. Gresini Racing's Alex Marquez finding his form again after a pretty problematic Portimao and Austin. 6th place on the grid goes the former Moto2 and Moto3 world champion. A late word of encouragement there, Valentino Rossi, to one of his star pupils, star graduates in the VR46 Academy, Pecco Bagnaia. We saw him at the end of that Q2 session this morning with the mistake at turn 2. He went over too late, really, on that medium rain tyre. Finds himself in 7th place on the grid. He did win the Spanish Grand Prix last year and did podium in the sprint from the second row. So it's not an impossible mission ahead of Bagnaia, and he's going to be super keen to find out, as is this man Jorge Martin, because on Saturdays and Sundays, when there's been points at stake, there's been vibrations, and not good ones as well, and chatter for the likes of Martin and Bagnaia over the last couple of Grand Prix. It's going to be interesting to see how the GP24s go here this afternoon.
Yeah, arguably the big winner in qualifying this morning was Martin. Although he was beaten to pole by Marquez and to second by Bezzecchi, he starts 3rd. The rider immediately behind him in the championship, Bastianini, is 9th. Vinales, who's 3rd in the points, is 11th. Pedro Acosta, who's 4th in the championship, starts 10th. And Pecco Bagnaia, 5th in the championship, back in 7th. So there is a real opportunity this afternoon and tomorrow, if you can get away at the start, for Jorge Martin to put some real daylight between himself and his nearest pursuers in the championship.
What a Saturday crowd we have here in Jerez. It's always a special atmosphere. A cacophony of noise is about to erupt here in Jerez when the riders start their warm-up lap. Here is, as we just mentioned, Alex Marquez going from 6th place on the grid. Best qualifying since he was on the front row of the grid in Qatar at the tail end of 2023. He was on the floor yesterday at turn 13 in the afternoon session. Did win his first ever Moto2 race here back in 2017 from pole. Top Honda qualifier by a long, long way. Brilliant performance this morning in those rain conditions by Johan Zarco. He starts 13th, and he's with Simon on the grid.
Johan, what a fantastic effort this morning. You clearly haven't given up. Your machine giving you a tough time in the dry, but the wet, unreal. But it's dry now. What are your goals for this one?
I would love a good start and gain some position on the first few corners, because I feel it's possible with this bike. Then when we catch the pace, it's getting more difficult, but I would say only 12 laps. With the soft, maybe we can keep this pace around the 12 or 10 position. This would be great to catch this information for tomorrow, because the point of the 8th position, I think I cannot think about it. If I can, I would try, but try to get this information for tomorrow.
Great stuff, good luck.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks to Johan Zarco. Yeah, top Honda qualifier, his equal best starting position of the season on the LCR RC213V. Fully focused, Marc Marquez then in the zone, getting himself ready to launch from pole position. Simon, quickly back down to you for some thoughts on our pole man.
Yeah, I was trying to get Michele Massini. He's probably, well, I've heard he's sick, so he's not at the grid, and that's a team manager for Marquez, Marc Marquez, who's on pole. Because my thoughts are, like, with that wet session, they've had not enough time to arrange electronic settings and stuff, but my thoughts are, my worries are for them is also front tyre temperature. You don't get a chance to double check, and then if you suddenly find yourself on pole from a great effort in the wet and you don't know what pressure to put in because maybe you'll get the whole shot, that's a little bit scary position to be in. Shame we couldn't hear from him.
Yeah, thanks for that, Simon. It will be interesting to see how this one pans out. What a story that was, what a stat that was. There are 17 MotoGP winners on this grid, a record. What a stat that was. Pedro Costa just getting some late words of encouragement and a handshake and a fist bump from the team boss, Hervé Poncharal. We expect some fireworks from the Shark coming through from 10th place on the grid. Gloves are on, ready to fight and ready for action now, isn't he, Marc Marquez? This is a starting position that he's never experienced before in the Ducati, a starting position he's not had since Portimao last year. This man certainly loves racing in Jerez. Spanish Grand Prix winner in 2022 and 2023. Platforms that he used to go on to win the World Championship in both years. 27-year-old Italian Pecco Bagnaia, winless though on Super Saturday since the Red Bull Ring. No Tissot sprint win in 12 for Bagnaia. No sprint podium in 5 since the back end of last year in Sepang. A record that he's going to want to set straight pretty sharpish.
Well, of course, for the riders out of position on the grid, the likes of Acosta, Bagnaia, Bastianini, etc., the start is going to be so important. Of course, last year we had 4 starts effectively, didn't we, across the sprint and the Grand Prix itself. Both of the initial starts of those two were red flagged due to incidents at the start. Really, I think you want to be on the inside going into those corners in case there are any incidents up ahead. You can duck up the inside of them. Both Acosta and Bagnaia are on the riders' left down the start-finish straight on the racing line, but potentially in the path of trouble if we get any at the start.
So Tissot sprint action coming our way over 12 laps here in Jerez. Front row seeking a 12th consecutive sprint podium is world champion leader Jorge Martin, looking to build on a 21-point lead over Enea Bastianini in the championship. Marco Bezzecchi on the front row for the first time in 2024, and for the first time in his Ducati career, back on pole, it's number 93 and pole 93, Marc Marquez.